It's now 85 seconds to midnight. The apocalypse is closer now than it's ever been, according to the catastrophic risks are on the rise, cooperation is on the decline, and we are running out of time. Wars and rumors of wars are increasing now for the stroke of midnight. It's later than it's ever been. Welcome to Marking the End Times. I am Mark Hitchcock. And before I get into this week's program, I just want to give a great shout out to so many of you and just a thank you. Last week, I mentioned how that many of you who watch every week aren't subscribers to our channel here at YouTube, and how I just ask you to hit that subscribe button and also to hit the like button as well to help get the message out to more people. Well, I was blown away by the response. Thank you so much for many of you who subscribed this last week, and I appreciate that so much. Just the response was such an encouragement to me, and I want to just use that as well to just say that if you haven't done that yet, do that. Hit that subscribe button and become a subscriber, and you'll get the notifications of our programs that come out every week. And continue to hit the like button as well, especially today, as we're going to talk about a topic that so many people are wondering about in these times. So thank you so much for those of you who've subscribed. If you haven't done that yet, I hope that you'll do that and help get the word out about the Lord's coming and how we need to be prepared and what we need to be doing as we await the coming of Christ. Well, welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock. It's now 85 seconds to midnight. The apocalypse is closer now than it's ever been, according to the latest shift of the Doomsday Clock, which is set annually by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. There's a New York Times headline this week that says, Doomsday Clock ticks closer than ever to the apocalypse. Here's what that article says. The Doomsday Clock, a metaphorical timepiece meant to depict how close humanity is to destruction, ticked closer than ever to midnight on Tuesday, 85 seconds to the stroke of doom. It is the grimmest outlook yet on Earth's future from the clock's creators, a nonprofit organization and publication called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists that has set the clock each year since 1947. Alexandra Bell, who's president and chief executive of the Bulletin, said this: catastrophic risks are on the rise, cooperation is on the decline, and we are running out of time. Well, in this week's program, I'm going to talk about the reasons for this shift in the time on the Doomsday Clock and how many of their reasons that they give mirror biblical prophecies of the end times pointing toward midnight on God's prophetic clock. Now, before we continue on with that topic, I want to spotlight the second half of this week's program. We're going to continue our exposition of the book of Revelation. And we're in really what I believe are the two most difficult chapters in the book of Revelation, Revelation 17 and 18, Babylon the Great. Who or what is Babylon? That's what I want to talk about today. I want to tell you who I believe Babylon is. Been a lot of candidates for Babylon throughout history. I want to tell you who Babylon is, in my opinion, and why. So we'll talk about that in the second half of this week's program. But the Doomsday Clock was created in 1947 by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. It was motivated by the organization's concern about the prospect of nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union. USA Today has an article this week in which they answer the question, how did the Doomsday Clock start? And the article says this: in 1945, on the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, scientists who'd worked on the Manhattan Project, which built the world's first atomic bombs, began publishing a mimeographed newsletter called the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. 2 years later, as those same scientists contemplated a world in which 2 atomic weapons had been used in Japan, they gathered to discuss the threat to humanity posed by nuclear war. And they called this the Doomsday Clock. And so this clock serves as a global metaphor for how close humanity is to self-annihilation. This clock is set annually. The hands are moved by this organization's Science and Security Board. It consists of experts in nuclear technology, global security, climate change, and other fields. Now, all the way back in 1947, the very first time it was set at 7 minutes to midnight. 1953, it was set at 2 minutes to midnight, and it shifted over the years dramatically. The clock was actually the furthest from midnight in 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed, and it was 17 minutes to midnight. In 2020, they set it at 100 seconds to midnight. So notice we moved from a lot of minutes now to seconds. In 2023, it was 90 seconds to midnight. It didn't move in 2024, stayed at 90 seconds. Then last year in 2025, moved 1 second to 89 seconds to midnight. But this year it moved a full 4 seconds in just 1 year. It's now the closest to midnight since the introduction of this clock in 1947. And that really shouldn't surprise us with all that we see happening in our world today. Now, the analysis of the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists reveals that they believe the world is less safe and less stable than just a year ago. In fact, significantly so. Now, here are some of the events from 2025 that these scientists said kind of informed this year's Doomsday Clock setting. Number one is the Russia-Ukraine war entering its 4th year, characterized by Russian tests of nuclear-capable weapons. Secondly, the conflict between India and Pakistan flared up this last year, highlighting the risk of all-out war between these two nuclear-armed countries. Next is the United States and Israel launched attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. North Korea kept building its nuclear arsenal, tested missiles designed to carry nuclear warheads, and tightened relations with Russia. China increased its stockpile of nuclear warheads. The last major nuclear arms control agreement between the United States and Russia moved closer to expiration in February this year, which would end 60 years of nuclear constraint between the two powers. The United States announced plans for a new missile defense system based on space-based interceptors called the Golden Dome, raising the possibility of conflict in space. Then they had several points there, and I won't read all of those, but several points related to climate change. Next, scientists warned that the laboratory synthesis of cells, this is fascinating, they call this mirror life, that this could cause a devastating pandemic, crop failures, and the collapse of ecosystems. Artificial intelligence grew more sophisticated, raising concerns it could be used to create new weapons and exacerbate disinformation campaigns, obviously by rulers who want to use that disinformation to control people's lives. Now, as I read through all of that, I thought to myself, you could summarize all of what they've said there in just a few points. One of the main points would be wars and rumors of wars. You could summarize a lot of that in that simple statement. Wars and rumors of wars are increasing. And we look at our world today, how much longer until the lid blows off? You've got Russia mentioned, China, North Korea, Iran, India, Pakistan. And of course, Russia and Iran are key players in the Ezekiel 38 war. But you can just summarize all that, wars and rumors of wars, exactly what Jesus said will proliferate as the end draws near. You also have pandemics, the fear of pandemics, of some pandemics that'll be unleashed. What did Jesus say in Matthew 24? There'll be plagues in various places. In Revelation chapter 6, the rider on the 4th horse, the pale rider, says that one of the things that will cause the death of 1/4 of the people on the earth, 25% of the global population, will be the wild beasts of the earth. Many of these diseases today are coming from animals. And so this mirror life that can unleash these diseases on the earth is a great fear of these out of control pandemics. And then the other thing that I would say, just to kind of summarize what they've said here, is technology. Just this fear that technology is going to increase disinformation. It'll be able to be used by global leaders to concentrate power in the hands of just a few people, which we know will ultimately lead to the empire of the Antichrist. So to me, it's fascinating that the things that these scientists and these leaders see are the very same things the Bible says will pave the way and find fulfillment in the end times. Now, let me just remind us as I wind this up that God has his own doomsday clock. God has his own doomsday clock, and really, that's the only one that matters. You say, well, what are you referring to? Well, I'm referring to Daniel 9:27, Really, that's the only time prophecy in the Bible. We always want to know what time, when's the Lord coming back? But the only prophecy that's really related directly to time is Daniel 9:27. Daniel 9:27 says, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people, Daniel, and your holy city, the city of Jerusalem. So God carved off 70 weeks. It's 70 sets of 7 years, 490 years. The word literally means God carved off a period of 490 years for the Jewish people, for God to accomplish his purposes with them and in them and through them. Well, 483 years of that time has come and gone. It started in 444 BC. It ended with the triumphal entry of Jesus in 33 AD. So now we're in this kind of parenthesis, this intermission, this church age. But the Bible tells us the clock will start ticking again when a coming world ruler, the Antichrist, makes a 7-year covenant, a treaty with the nation of Israel. And so it's been pointed out by many Bible teachers over the years that Israel is God's timepiece, that they are God's clock. And as we look today at God's timepiece, we see that Israel, of course, is back in the land. Jews keep coming there. There's almost half of the Jews in the world today live in Israel. We see the Gog-Magog coalition coalescing, a group of nations that will attack Israel when they're at rest and living securely in their land. We know that the Antichrist is going to come make this peace agreement with Israel that will begin that last 7 years of this age, the last 7 years on God's prophetic clock. And we see today the Abraham Accords. We see this board of peace. We see a great peace movement in the Middle East. So it's kind of two things at the same time. We see all these wars and rumors of wars. Yet when it comes to Israel and the Middle East, we see a great movement there towards peace. At the same time, we see spiraling anti-Semitism in our world today. So all of the ingredients are coming together, and the clock is ticking. I like this story. It's kind of a corny old story, but I like it. It's a story about a little boy that was playing when in his grandmother's house near a great big grandfather clock. You've seen those big, grandfather clocks before. Noontime was approaching, and when the hands of the old timepiece reached 12, the chimes began to ring. And this little boy always liked to count out each gong as it was sounded. But this time, however, something went wrong with the clock's inner mechanism, and instead of stopping at 12, it just kept on chiming 13, 14, 15, 16 times. And the boy couldn't believe his ears, so he jumped to his feet, ran to the kitchen, and shouted, "Grandma, Grandma, it's later than it's ever been before." When in his excitement, that boy really expressed an important prophetic truth. It's later than it's ever been before. And of course, God is the only one who knows the time on the cosmic doomsday clock. He's the only one who knows. But even secular scientists see that time is running out, and it's running out quickly. And those who know God's word, especially God's prophetic word, see clearly that the stage is perfectly set now for the stroke of midnight. It's later than it's ever been. Well, let's go now to our continued study, our continued exposition of the book of Revelation. We're going to dive back into Revelation chapter 17 and look at the identification of Babylon the Great. We're continuing our exposition in the book of Revelation, and we've come to these two long chapters, Revelation 17 and 18, that deal with one topic, and that is Babylon. And I won't rehearse what we did last time, but we saw that Babylon is represented here as a woman, represented here as a harlot. But we found out in chapter 17, verse 18, that first and foremost, Babylon is a city. Revelation 17:18 says, Babylon is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. So it's a future city, a city in the end times that's going to rule over the kings of the earth. And we saw that it's both a city and a system. It's the system that goes along with the city. And Babylon finds its beginning all the way back in Genesis chapters 10 and 11, where all the world was gathered together after the flood. They're all gathered together there in rebellion against God. God had told them to scatter and all around the earth and be fruitful and multiply, but they gather in one place there and shake their collective fist in God's face. And they're gathered there under the leadership of one man, a man named Nimrod. God comes down and scatters people over the face of the earth. And we said last time that the world's gone from tribalism to nationalism to globalism. We're kind of back to Babylon or back to Babel now again. And so you have two chapters, Genesis 10 and 11, that deal with Babylon in the beginning. Now we have two chapters here at the end of the biblical story, Revelation 17 and 18, that deal with Babylon again. This is kind of God's final dealings with Babylon. And really throughout the Bible, Babylon is pictured as man's city. Now, what I want to talk about today, kind of drill down here specifically, is what is Babylon? We know it's a city, but what city will it be? There have been all kinds of candidates for Babylon. People believe it's Rome. Many people believe it's New York City. People believe that it's just whatever city will be ruling the world in the end. Kind of a trans-temporal city, just whatever city's ruling and reigning over the earth in the end times, that will be Babylon. So there have been a lot of different candidates for Babylon. Now, I don't want to be dogmatic about this. I never would be, because I think identifying Babylon may be the most difficult issue in the book of Revelation. But I want to give you 9 reasons quickly why I believe that Babylon here refers to literal Babylon, a literal Babylon that will be rebuilt in modern-day Iraq on the Euphrates River. I want to give you 9 reasons why I believe that. First of all, geographical locations in Revelation are literal unless otherwise indicated. If you read it in chapter 1, John was on the island of Patmos. Well, we take that to literally be Patmos. Jesus wrote 7 letters to 7 churches: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. We take those to be those literal places. And so sometimes in the book of Revelation, when it names a place, it'll let you know that it's symbolic. Like in chapter 11, verse 8, it talks about the city, which is mystically called Sodom and Egypt. Well, it's clearly referring to Jerusalem because it says it's the city where our Lord was crucified. But he's saying here it's mystically called Sodom and Egypt. You go to chapter 16, we have Armageddon. We take that to be the literal place up in the northern part of Israel. So for me, when I read about a place in the book of Revelation, my default is to take it literally. Now, one problem with this, or one reason people don't take it literally, is when the name is given of Babylon, that this woman, he sees this harlot, and it says in verse 5, on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. Well, some older translations say, on her forehead a name was written, Mystery Babylon. And so they make the word mystery part of the title. So they'll say, well, this is Mystery Babylon. It's not literal Babylon. But I think the better way to translate it is the way I read it here in the New American Standard, is on her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great. So it's not Mystery Babylon. It's Babylon the Great, which is a mystery. In other words, he's going to tell us things now about Babylon that have not been previously revealed. So I take it literally here because these other locations in Revelation are literal. Secondly, Babylon means Babylon about 300 times in the Bible. The only time in the Bible that Babylon possibly doesn't mean Babylon is 1 Peter 5:13, where Peter says, those from Babylon greet you. Now, some believe that he's in Rome at that time or some other place, but he seems to be using some term for the place he is in a symbolic way. So that would be the one exception. But over 300 times in the Bible, Babylon means Babylon. Also, it's called Babylon 6 times in the book of Revelation. Chapter 14, verse 8, and then 5 times, and then chapter 16, verse 19, and then 4 times in Revelation 17 and 18. It's literally called Babylon. So if it's a symbolic name, why is it repeated over and over again and called Babylon? Now, number 4, wherever Babylon is, it's in the desert. In verse 3 of chapter 17, John says, he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So John is carried away in the spirit into a wilderness where he sees this woman, which is Babylon. And of course, in modern day Iraq, where Babylon is on the Euphrates, that's out in the wilderness. Rome's not in the wilderness. New York City's not in the wilderness. A lot of these other candidates. So I think that's an important point to bring out. Number 5, there are no fulfillment of certain Old Testament passages related to Babylon. I won't have time to read a lot of these, but you can look these up yourself. Isaiah 13 is critical. Also Jeremiah 50 and 51, which are two Old Testament chapters that talk about the destruction of Babylon, of historic Babylon. But in Isaiah 13, 19 to 22, it says this, Babylon, the jewel of the kingdoms, the pride and glory of the Babylonians, will be overthrown by God like Sodom and Gomorrah. She will never be inhabited or lived in through all generations. There no nomads will pitch their tents. There no shepherds will rest their flocks, but desert creatures will lie there. Jackals will fill her houses. There are owls, the owls will dwell, and there the wild goats will leap about. Hyenas will inhabit her strongholds, jackals her luxurious palaces. Babylon was never destroyed like Sodom and Gomorrah. It was overtaken by the Medo-Persians under a man named Darius. Remember back in Daniel chapter 5? But Babylon continued to exist for centuries and just kind of slowly, went into a state of disrepair and just kind of slowly disappeared. It wasn't destroyed like Sodom and Gomorrah. And even today, there's some rebuilding that's taking place in that area. Now, it's nothing massive or significant, but it says it'll never be inhabited or lived in again. There will be no nomads. Nobody will pitch their tents there. It's absolute total destruction, never rebuilt again. So for that to be literally fulfilled, I believe it will have to happen sometime in the future because it's not happened to Babylon up to now. So I think this requires a rebuilt Babylon, a new Babylon, if you will, that's then destroyed like Sodom and Gomorrah, never inhabited again, for those prophecies to literally be fulfilled. Number 6, twice in the book of Revelation, the Euphrates River is mentioned. It's mentioned in chapter 9 and chapter 16. Something significant's happening around the Euphrates. And then we come to chapter 17 and 18 and we find out about Babylon. Well, Babylon was on the Euphrates River. So I think the mention of the Euphrates is significant in its connection with ancient Babylon. Number 7, Babylon is called in chapter 17 the mother or the source of all spiritual harlotry. Now that makes sense if it's literal Babylon, because if you go back to the Tower of Babel, everybody was scattered from that one place. And so Babylon, literal Babylon on the Euphrates River, was literally the source of all the spiritual harlotry in all the world. It all came from there because it's scattered out from that place. And there's really no other city you could say about that city that it's the mother or the source of all spiritual harlotry. Number 8, and I won't have time to look at this in detail, or really the next point, but there are some striking parallels in chapters 17 and 18 between Babylon here and ancient Babylon in chapters 10 and 11. For instance, in chapter 18 of Revelation, in verse 5, he says, "For her sins," talking about Babylon, "have piled up as high as heaven." Well, that kind of is a reminder of the Tower of Babel that was built up and, tried to reach into heaven. We see the same thing in chapter 18, verse 21. A strong angel took a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, "So will Babylon be thrown down in violence and not be formed any longer." And so, again, Babylon's there by the sea, it's thrown into the sea. It's a picture of ancient Babylon. So there's these connections here. And that kind of goes into the next point. There are numerous parallels between Revelation 17 and 18, Babylon there, and Babylon in Jeremiah 50 and 51. Jeremiah 50 and 51 are two long chapters about ancient Babylon. And it's interesting, the first time that Babylon is mentioned in the book of Revelation, in chapter 14, verse 8, that's an allusion to Jeremiah 51:8, which is literal Babylon. So Babylon in Jeremiah 50:51 is literal Babylon. Lots of parallels you can find between that and chapter 17 and 18 leads me to believe that Revelation 17 and 18 is kind of the final version of Babylon, if you will. It's kind of Babylon 2.0. So what is Babylon? Babylon is a godless, global religious economic system with its headquarters in a rebuilt city of Babylon in the end times. That's what I believe it is. And for the final 3.5 years of the tribulation, the Antichrist will rule over Babylon just like Nimrod ruled over Babylon in chapters 10 and 11 of the book of Genesis. So everything will ultimately come full circle when this takes place. So think about this. Initially, Babylon controls the Antichrist. Or it could be that the Antichrist supports Babylon, because you remember the woman rides the beast. The woman is Babylon. The beast is the Antichrist. Now, when someone's riding an animal, you could either say that person is controlling that animal because they're guiding where it goes, or you could say that animal is supporting that person that's riding them. So it's kind of hard to know which one of those is dominant there. Probably both of those are true. But we read in Revelation 17, at the midpoint of the tribulation, the Antichrist is going to throw off Babylon. He's going to throw Babylon off and overtake Babylon, take it over and make it his headquarters. And then at the end of the tribulation period, God is going to destroy Babylon himself. God will come and destroy this city that goes all the way back to chapters 10 and 11 of Genesis, man's city, the city that's been a headquarters of the Antichrist. Now, sometimes people will ask, well, how in the world are you going to build a big city over there on the Euphrates River, in modern day Iraq? There's a parallel to that today. There's this city called Naum. It's the Saudi Arabian mega city. Maybe you've heard about it. The price tag for it initially is $2 trillion. It's called the Line often, and it was first planned as a 100-mile-long string of skyscrapers, standing over 1,600 feet tall and housing 1.5 million people. Now, it was planned as being as big as Belgium, as big as the country of Belgium. Now, because of some changes over there, it may be much smaller. It's been cut down, some say, from 106 miles to just 1.5 miles, and it's not going to just house 300,000 people instead of 1.5 million people. But however large it ends up being, you can see here that the path is being paved there for massive commercial centers to be built very quickly in that oil-rich area of the Middle East. And so I see in the end times two Babylons. Revelation 17 is going to focus on its spiritual influence, its spiritual harlotry. Chapter 18 focuses on its commercial economic influence. And at the end of the tribulation period, Babylon will be destroyed by God, probably as part of the campaign of Armageddon. So it's the final act of God before the second advent. Now, one of the things I always think about when about Babylon and all that's written there is how do we apply that to our life today? Let me just say this. The main application of Babylon for us is that we don't want to be like Babylon. I think that would be the simplest application. Whatever Babylon is, wherever it's located, we don't want to be like it. Whatever specific city it is, don't be like Babylon. It's seductive, it's immoral, it's prideful, it's greedy, godless. Everything in our world today that's like Babylon should be rejected by us. It's rejected by God. It should be rejected by us. We must flee from every Babylonian influence that's increasing around us. Let me just leave you with these words of Revelation 18, verse 4. Speaking of Babylon, the Lord says, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive any of her plagues." Let's seek to do that as our world's becoming more Babylonian. Let's seek to come out from it and be separate so that we don't share in her sins. Well, thank you so much for joining us each week and for hitting the like button there and letting others know about this ministry and about these videos. We're trying to bring you up-to-date information about what's happening in our world related to the end times, but also just some good, solid Bible teaching going through the book of Revelation to help you understand that what that great book has to say for us about our time and about the end time. God bless you. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.